welcome back to the studio. This week I'm going to share with you why I love using tissue paper for hand printing at home. So when you're printing without a press, you need to use thin paper. And when I discovered tissue paper for printing, it was a total game changer. So in this video, I'm going to show you the paper that I use, why it's so good for hand printing at home, and then how I use it as well. And at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how I float mount my tissue paper. So keep watching for that. If you don't know me, I'm Ruth. I've been hand printing in my tiny shed studio in Bristol, UK for many years now. I hope my videos can help you deepen your art practice through hand printing at home as well. Head over to ruthander.co.uk if you want to sign up for my monthly email of inspiration, or you can check out my instant access video courses as well if you want to dive in straight away. All the links are in the description. Okay, let's get started. So the tissue paper that I use is actually archival tissue. And I get it either as sheets like this, they come in sort of packs of about 100, or you can get it in rolls as well. I actually prefer the rolls. Unfortunately, I couldn't get them this time when I made my order. The rolls are wider, and you've got more control over the size of your piece of paper as well. But these are fine as well, and I'll put links in the description as to where you can get them from. I actually use a company called Preservation Equipment Limited, who make tissue for museum purposes, for wrapping objects and interleafing in between documents and things like that. So it's definitely archival and pH neutral. Now, usually they have a smooth and a rough, very slightly rougher side. I tend to print on the slightly rougher side, but it really doesn't matter too much. It's just that the rougher side, I think, just has a nicer texture to it. Now, this is not wet strength tissue, and the reason being is that I do not use water-based ink. I don't get the paper wet, essentially. I use oil paint, generally speaking. So oil paint, as the name suggests, is oil-based, and it doesn't have any water in it at all. So it's not going to make your paper lose any strength. It's not going to make it rip or anything like that. However, if you are using a water-based ink or paint, then I would suggest perhaps getting wet strength tissue. And again, I've put a link in the description. Carnival is the make, and they do a wet strength tissue. It's usually for making things that are going to be outside, but it is just as good as well. So it's just that I don't happen to, because I tend to almost always use oil-based ink, but that is something that you might want to think about. So why use tissue paper? Well, it is quite flyaway, so don't be doing this in a breeze or with any wind, but it is surprisingly strong. And the other thing that it has is it has no memory, so to speak. So you can fold it, you can crease it, and it will flatten out again. Sometimes it needs a little bit of extra coaxing, maybe a little bit of ironing, but it will go back to being flat, especially if you then use it for collage or glue as well. And often the printing process just flattens it out anyway. The other great thing about it is that you don't need to necessarily register your paper if you're doing several layers. You can see through it, it's transparent. So you can just place it by eye. Usually you can see through it enough that you can place it in the correct place. I'm a fan of slightly misregistered edges anyway. The other great thing is that you can just use hand pressure to print. Yes, you can use a Baron as well, and you can use all sorts of other burnishes, but quite often it's thin enough that you can use your hands to print. It's also got this lovely ethereal quality because it's transparent. It's not bright white, and that means that when you're printing on it and it's not having a bright white coming through the colour. It's kind of got the texture of the tissue paper there in the print as well. Also, it picks up every little mark. So you can see here that all the little marks I made have been picked up. The paper is so thin that it pushes against every bit of your surface and every bit of your paint and picks up everything. One of the other great things I like about it is that you can use it afterwards for all sorts of things. So here I've used it to wrap book covers. I made some little concertina artist books, and the covers are made by wrapping bookbinding card with printed tissue paper. So you can wrap
all sorts of things with it. I've wrapped pebbles before, I've wrapped objects, I've folded things up. It's really versatile like that. And this one here was like a little envelope that I made to house another little print inside. So it's brilliant for things like that.
So what can you do with your prints once you've finished? Well, over the years, I've come up with a method for float mounting my tissue paper prints that I want to mount, frame, and sell on. So I'll show you how I do that now.
So here I've actually got a piece, it's actually on Japanese paper this, but a thin paper, and I can mount it up just like this. I've cropped it down right to the edges, as you can see, and this piece of mount card is cut down to the right size for it. So what I do is I flip it over and I use a tape called Self-adhesive Hinging tape, and it's made by a company called Lineco, and I will link that in the description. And it's brilliant. It's basically kind of like sticky tissue paper. So you can cut little T-hinges. So that's where you put one piece of tape facing up, sticky side up, one piece of tape facing sticky side down, and just place them into the corners. Now in this one I'm just going to do the top two corners, not all of the corners, but you could do all of the corners if it was a bigger piece. I find that the top two corners are fine for smaller pieces. And they will still stay rooted to your mount board. Okay, and then just flip over, press it onto your mount board, and with this tape, finger pressure, hand pressure is enough to stick it down. And there we go, that is ready to have a window mount round it, and then to put into a frame if you want to. But it looks really good, and you can't see the tape.
So I talk about this way of printing in my new guide, How to Be a Rebel Printmaker, 5 Rules You Need to Break to Make Your Best Work on Paper. And that comes to you free when you sign up to my email list. And you can do that via the link in the description. I also use tissue paper a lot in my instant access self-paced video courses. So take a look at those as well. They're at ruthander.co.uk. Thanks for watching and see you next week.